Hey guys, what's going on? Welcome to Embrace the Power Coastal Connection with me and Mike G down in Tampa. And we got Nat out in the Midwest. Nat, are you in Illinois?
I am in Illinois. I'm about 35 minutes just west of Chicago.
Oh, right. All right. So, hey, she's not in Cabrini Greens, everybody, but hey, yeah, she's in Illinois. Hey, so I want to touch on something real quick before we get the show rolling. 9/11 is tomorrow. We just want to say, hey, to all the first responders and all the military out there, thank you for your service. Keep doing what you're doing and always keep us safe. You know what I'm saying? Ain't that right, Mike G?
That's right. That's right. And welcome, Florida, to Chi-Town. Chi-Town of Florida.
Hey, so Nat, how's it going? And what I wanted to kind of ask you real quick is you've got a nonprofit, you're an educator. Congratulations on your promotion, by the way, and that you're doing all these wonderful things. So tell the audience a little bit about where you're at, which you've already said, Illinois, but where you're at and how, and you build a little bit about your journey and who you are.
Absolutely. Well, first and foremost, thank you for having me. It's an honor to be here. And thank you for the shout out that you just gave to not only the individuals that we lost in 9/11, but to our current individuals serving. Because, you know, my husband is a 27-year veteran of the police force here locally. So we're very thankful for those kind words. But my journey started at the age of 29. I was a very young mother. And to my surprise, I then became shortly after that a stroke survivor. So I became advocating for those with congenital heart disease because it was made aware that through that stroke I had that I was born with undetected congenital heart disease. And that just began the trajectory of where I am today.
Wow. You know, so I got a good friend, her name, she lives here in Florida. She was a soldier. Young, she was pretty much like 29 years old or, you know, early 30s, had a stroke. I was blown away that she had a stroke so young in her life. So, you know, kind of give us some insight on, and Mike was throwing some statistics up, you know, I think Americans don't take strokes very seriously and the percentage of people that have them. So since you started this nonprofit Stroke of Insight, what made you really realize that is your you know, your calling to, you know, to get after that cause?
Well, be that it was 16 years ago, I think you find yourself going through life's journey, which is blessings, and it comes with both positives and negatives in our lives. And at the age of 29, I had a 2.5-year-old and I had a 9-week-old. And I lost all my speech and all the feeling in the right side of my body. And so I was mainly concerned about finding a doctor that could do the procedure I needed, since the FDA did not find me as a candidate for the procedure I needed. So you're taking that journey and you're trying to find a physician in a hospital that will do this procedure for you. Then I went on to have another child. So I'm a very young mother. I had the ability to stay at home, but sometimes life takes you down some different paths. I went through a divorce that was not planned after almost 15 years. And there again, right, you're starting to rebuild. You're starting to find more of yourself through this process and having experiences that you never thought you would while taking care of 3 little boys. And so then I became time to go back to work. It was time for me to, all 3 of my boys were in school full time. And so here I am yet again, right, trying to just get towards that next achievement or even just that next day. Some days you're living day by day, right? So it wasn't until 1.5 years ago and that I really started to think about, why did this happen to me and what am I supposed to do with it? It took me 16 years to really figure out my why. And along that way, I finished my EDS in Educational Learning and Administration, which has brought me to the assistant principal I am today, and also meeting my fantastic husband on Match.com. It really does happen. And so a friend of mine, actually my former choreographer from the Chicago Bulls, said, Natalie, you need to be part of the Mrs. Illinois pageant system. And I said, it has been almost 25 years since I did a pageant. And she said, it's platform based. And I said, I don't have a platform. And she said, yes, you do. You are constantly advocating for stroke and congenital heart disease. So really, it was my jump back into pageantry that brought me through this journey of developing Stroke of Insight, starting the website, starting my podcast. And that really brought me to where I am today, and connecting myself with my physician that really truly saved my life, Dr. Hijazi, and his society, which is called the PIC Society. So there's been a lot of people along my journey that have helped to bring me to where I am today, but it really truly took me over 15 years to find the why.
All right. So you talk about resiliency and you talk about impact. All right, so you've met a lot of people who have gone through this process now, and we see Mike's. We're throwing up. You've been on TV show, on news networks. Everybody's got you out there as a spokesperson talking about what you're doing. So, what is the one thing that's really impacted you now? The fact that you are touching so many lives and people are telling you their story. Is there anything in particular that someone said to you that's really kind of moved your world since you started this journey?
I think it's when people tell me what an inspiration I am, but it's because I was transparent and I made myself vulnerable to share my story. Not even just my story about being a stroke survivor, having 2 devices in my heart, losing all my speech, having no feeling in the right side of my body, but the openness that I am about sharing my journey. We all have our stuff. Anyone that tries to say that their lives are perfect, it's not. We all have our stuff in some way, shape, or form. And I was always very open about my journey too, as a mom on my own and going through a divorce, because we know that rate has increased quite a bit over the past several years. And so it's when people just talk to me about the inspiration I am that allowed them to open up about maybe their story that was related or not related to mine. So it really is a beautiful thing when we can have acceptance, but then we can also inspire others through being vulnerable and telling our stories.
Oh yeah, I agree with you, Mike. You got anything, brother? While you over there clicking away?
Yeah, and a happier note. So, did you win Miss Midwest International?
So that year that I entered the pageant, I won first runner-up to Mrs. Illinois. But the interesting thing about it is, it was about 2 months before I was going to do the pageant again this past November 2022. And the current Mrs. Illinois resigned. So guess who became Mrs. Illinois for 2 months?
All right.
So I'm a rule follower. So rules say first runner-up takes the Mrs. Illinois title. But I didn't have an opportunity to cross the international stage with Stroke of Insight. And as soon as you put a sash and a crown on it, all of a sudden people start listening. It's really amazing. I recommend it.
That is true.
So then I was blessed that they crowned me Mrs. Midwest International, and I was able to go to Kingsport, Tennessee this past July and compete. So it was wonderful to bring my inspiration, my advocacy, and just my openness and willingness to tell my story, because it is one that is very eye-opening. To say to yourself, there at one point in my life, I couldn't speak. I couldn't move. It's very eye-opening. And I met some amazing women that have some fantastic stories of survival and resilience. It was a beautiful thing.
Yeah, it was just fell in place for you. Like you have a story behind it. You got the international trophy, and it's just that's you're a lucky one.
Very blessed. And you keep moving mountains. That's what I say. I didn't bring home the Mrs. International crown, but I started my job the day after I got back. And I really, truly feel that my work in education as an assistant principal is crown enough. And I know that I do great things through that work. And I can also do great things through my work with Stroke of Insight and the PIC Society and also the Mended Hearts organization.
So you're changing the world, right? And you're starting to get out. So if somebody wants to get in and donate on your website, where do they go just to to donate to really get involved in what you're trying to do and change the world around you?
Absolutely. So I would ask that you just fill out a contact us page. There's a button on my website. Send me an email, because I work with Mended Hearts International and I also work with the PIC Society. So we have some different options for people that want to get involved. We also have our congenital heart disease awareness bracelet. I know you showed it there on my first page of my website. That's from Nick and Bella Designs. And part of the proceeds for those congenital heart disease awareness bracelets, do go to the PIC Society, which is the society that I was at their gala yesterday evening alongside my cardiologist, Dr. Hijazi. And so that's a great way to give back as well. And it's a perfect piece for Valentine's Day or just an everyday piece for someone that you know has survived stroke or congenital heart disease.
Oh, I love that. You put that plug in for Valentine's Day is around the corner, even though you're
I know, you better start planning now.
That's right. Start planning now. So another thing I'm going to touch on is that, you're about fitness. I check it out that, you're always posting some stuff about fitness or getting out. So as we look at America getting bigger and larger, okay, let's just cut through the chase here.
Yes.
We have a problem with diabetes. One, we have a problem with diabetes. Two, it's growing in high numbers and also high blood pressure. As Americans choose to be more sediment and sit around, they become a higher risk in different areas and high blood pressure and stroke. And I think a lot of times that we look at certain things and go, well, that can't happen to me. But I think stroke doesn't care what age you are. So what's your message right now is when you're out trying to talk to the younger generation that, by 20, you could be a stroke victim. And so how are you getting after that message? Because I realize the older generation is kind of aware of it because it used to be like an old person's thing. But these years, the age for strokes is a lot younger. So what are you trying to do to kind of help Americans and the people that you come across kind of get that message out, Nat?
Absolutely. This is a great question. What I love about this, Vince, is that in January, and you mentioned just me doing some connections and interviews with local news stations here. This happened to be a story that I did alongside NBC5, Lauren Petty, and also the American Heart Association and a neurologist at Rush University Medical Center here in Chicago. And the American Heart Association released a study this past January that they are trying to hone in a little bit more in regards to research with women under the age of 35 having strokes. We're seeing this increase. And so we're trying to see, is it pregnancy? Is it hormonal? What is causing the increase in strokes in women under the age of 35? So I'm proudly over the age of 35 now, but well over the age of 35, but I was 29 when I had my stroke. And this is one of the things that we're looking a little bit more and more into. What is this cause? Why is it happening to more women? And one of the things I said in that interview is stroke is coming for you if it's coming for you. It does not care about your age, your weight, your gender, your race, your size. I was a very active young woman. I started dancing at the age of 3. I danced at the University of Iowa. Go Hawkeyes.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that before we get out.
Yeah, go Bulls. And so I was very active. And it was because I had undetected congenital heart disease. I had 2 holes in my heart and an atrial septum aneurysm. That's why I had that. So we're looking more and more into why this is happening. And so this is one of the things I speak on. And because of that, at National Capitol Hill Advocacy Day in May, I worked alongside the Adult Congenital Heart Association and also the Mended Hearts Organization in advocating virtually on Capitol Hill with healthcare legislators for some of our senators and congressmen, because we need to find a way to get echocardiograms in our youth. It could also be tied to the Newborn Screening Reauthorization Act of 2021. We need to start implementing these screenings at earlier ages because we know that echocardiogram is a very simple test. It gives us a picture of the heart, and that will tell us if someone has undetected congenital heart defects.
Oh, yeah, and so it's ironic is that we worry about breast cancer. We worry about, I have friends that have just fought different forms of cancer recently and in the past, but we really never talk about strokes. It's like one of the things in the 70s or the 60s that you would talk about. But I think more and more it's starting to become a topic of discussion. But even though when I go to the hospital to get checked, they're only checking for diabetes, if I have any cancer related issues, but it's not being part of my yearly exam when I go in. So I think we need to do better as a society in trying to get those exams put into play. What do you think?
Absolutely. And I think it comes down to, we see right now with politics in the world, there are some things that make top news. And sometimes I just want to say to some of these politicians, let's focus on saving lives. Let's start talking about real things that happen to real people. And it's just unfortunate. You know, we could talk about the price of gas all day long on the news, but I don't hear anyone highlighting how important echocardiograms are in infants and how we need to break those barriers with the insurance companies and break those barriers, you know, nationally, working alongside our individuals, you know, in Washington, D.C. We have got to make movement because this is not going away. As you said, we're seeing an increase in strokes. We don't, you know, it's different for different reasons. It could be pulmonary strokes, and those start from your legs and usually go to your lungs. It could be a congenital heart defect, but there are real things happening to real people, and we need to shift this focus politically to something that is really going to change lives. There's just so much out there right now that's negative, but there's always so much more like this that's positive that we can really do in finding solutions to real life problems.
And so that's what me and Mike G are all about, trying to do a little positivity. So on another positive note, hold on. Mike, show her award, because I can't pronounce it. But,
Yeah, we
so
can't pronounce it, but here it is. Yes.
So tell us.
Yep. Go ahead, Vin.
All right, so tell us about what is this award and why you got it. And we already know why you're special. So just tell us why somebody else decided to think you're special too.
Well, I am just being me, as I say. This is the way God made me. But this is an award I received yesterday evening from the PIC Society Gala. The PIC Society has a symposium every year, and it brings together the best interventional cardiologists and also nurses worldwide. And this year it was in Chicago. So my husband and I were asked to be the honorary guest at this gala in the city last night. And the Pediatric and Congenital Interventional Cardiovascular Society is PICS. And I was asked a year and a half ago to be their senior patient advocate. Well, last night, for all of my advocacy work, I was awarded founding senior patient advocate of the PICS Society. And as you can imagine, I know I would do this no matter what. I would do this because it's important work and because I came out of my stroke unscathed. I have no brain damage. I was lucky enough to have all the feeling back in my body. I danced it up with some of the best cardiologists in the world last night. More videos and pictures to come. And so it was just truly an honor. And to have my husband there alongside me to see this and just to hear people not even necessarily thank me for the work, but to come up to me and talk to me about what we're doing to change lives, to create advocacy, to break those barriers. It was truly an honor.
Right. I mean, nobody can do this journey by themselves, and you have to have support, especially with 3 kids and going through. We had another guest named Becca Gerbeski talking about the same thing of just the struggles of life, of what, people go through. And even if you're a man or a woman,
Yes.
But the thing is, the fact that you went through this, it makes you stronger. It does. So, do you run a blog? Do you constantly have to have, you don't sleep at all. So in your off time, are you running a blog? Because I'm sure people reach out to you all the time, just ask you for some support and how do you get through things?
They do. Well, it's wonderful because I get to work with people like you and Mike, and truly you're helping me bring this advocacy work to the front lines, right, of what we need to be doing to save more lives. So I try to keep my website updated. I am constantly sharing advocacy work and all sorts of information through my Instagram page, Mrs. Midwest International. I also connect it to my personal page as well, Natalie Marie, because as my reign comes to an end, I'm going to be continuing that work on my personal Instagram page. And so it's just really important for me to get that information out there in a very quick fashion because things are ever changing in the healthcare industry. And so I really try to focus my efforts on social media. I like to use Twitter for some highlights with the cardiologist at the PIC Society. And usually I keep that for my professional with being an assistant principal in education, because that's also something I advocate for, an equal education for all and bringing equity into everything we do. I work for the second largest school district in the state of Illinois. So shout out to District U46 and our amazing superintendent, Dr. Tony Sanders. And we just came off of a wonderful equity symposium last month, and we are just doing great things. So I'm really looking forward to also bringing my passion for advocacy into U46 as well, because once an advocate, always an advocate. So I really feel like it's that advocacy for those born with congenital heart disease, but it's also advocating for our youth, because if we invest in our youth and education, we are going to create life-saving individuals to continue the work that these physicians I'm working with now are doing.
Oh, yeah, we're working for the next generation because, I work in Hillsborough County, and we're like one of the biggest school districts in Florida.
Yeah.
All right, so Mike had your podcast up. Mike, throw it up. All right, you got to tell us about your podcast and how people can find out when to listen to it and, and get involved.
Absolutely. So my podcast, it's all audio. We do it at a time that's convenient for my guest. It's a click of a text message link and we're connected instantly. And so what I try to do through Stroke of Insight is to talk with real people, sharing their stories. I talk with mothers and fathers about their children who've experienced congenital heart defects and heart disease. I speak with people themselves that I've met through this journey. So if anyone is listening today and you know someone that is a congenital heart disease survivor, or you yourself are, and also stroke, please reach out to me. I'd love to have you on the podcast. I try to do one every now and then, aside from, keeping busy with kids and work and everything that we're doing just here as a family and my advocacy work, but always looking to connect with new individuals and even some physicians. I love to be able to highlight them as well, to talk about their work they're doing to save more lives.
Oh, awesome. That's what I'm talking about. So what about children's hospitals? Do you visit children's hospitals? I see. Yeah, all right. Hey, we got to go. Ain't that right, Mike?
Yeah, you knew.
Yeah, go ahead. So, like when you go to children's hospitals, because, it tears your heart up to see the, children in this situation, but, you bring hope. So how often do you go visit children's hospitals just to try to make an impact?
So believe it or not, the procedure I had, the transcatheter closure procedure, was actually done by my doctor, Dr. Hijazi, who was really starting this process on pediatric patients and then began to do it on adults. So I actually was a patient in the pediatric area of not only UIC here in Chicago, but then I moved over to Rush University with Dr. Hijazi when he moved his staff there. So it's very near and dear to my heart. And through the Mended Hearts organization, I head up their Chicago group, and I have brought our Bravery Bag program into Rush Children's Hospital, and we just gifted 50 Bravery Bags to children and their families at Rush University. And so what the Bravery Bag program is through the Mended Hearts organization is we put just simple items, toiletry items, things that parents might need during their long hospital stays with their children. We put Pop-Its and activities and Play-Doh and things like that in the bags for the children. So it's really just to let them know we're here, we're thinking of them. We put all of our pamphlets and information in those bags because we want parents to know that when you leave the hospital, you also have a line of support. We have little Mended Hearts for our very tiny ones. We have young Mended Hearts for our 18 to 55 age group. So if anyone is interested in joining Young Mended Hearts, I do head up the Chicago area branch here. So we're always looking for individuals to get involved, but I try once a year to align it with my annual cardiologist visit to bring in the Bravery Bags to Rush Children's Hospital. We are exclusive in there. It's quite amazing.
All right, so I'm gonna throw you a bone on this one now, since I run the Thurgood Marshall Club at Newsom High School in here in Florida, and so we support the United Way, and we also support veterans. So like this time when veterans come around, because I'm a retired general, so I gotta support the veterans, and I keep my holistic soldier hat rocking. You're welcome. So what we're gonna do is I want to make sure that I get more information on that. I will get with the Thurgood Marshall Club, and we will add you to our list. And if you need us to get with families to run a thing, my kids get service hours for it, but it will also help support what you're doing. So after this, we need to link up and knock that out. So Mike G, before we roll out, brothers, I always say, because you be clicking and punching away on those buttons and making this world exist. What you got, man?
It's been a great show. Pleasure meeting you. You keep it moving. You're doing a lot. And congratulations, Miss Midwest. Miss Midwest, everyone. 2022. Okay.
Thank you. And thank you to you both for bringing people like me to your show and allowing us to share a little bit of our journey with the world.
All right. So, Nat, before we get out of here, as I always ask people, if you have to, and at the end of all of this, if you have to leave your imprints in the sand with your fingerprints and your feet, what would you leave with everybody with?
So it's the motto that I live by and that you'll see a lot in my online advocacy work. It's be bold, be brave, and be you.
Oh, yeah. Hey, we appreciate you coming on the show. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. Always stay blessed, and definitely don't forget the people of 9/11 and their sacrifice, but also all the soldiers that I fought with in Iraq and all the guys that went to Afghanistan. Everybody that protects this country, first responders, police officers, teachers, firefighters. And I say teachers, that's right, because teachers do a lot and don't get enough respect for it. So with that being said, Nat, we love you. Thank you so much. And as me and Mike G always say,
keep it rolling.